Elton John, the British music legend, has stood at the pinnacle of the entertainment world for more than 5 decades, with hundreds of millions of records sold worldwide. Unforgettable hits like Your Song, Rocket Man, Tiny Dancer, Candle in the Wind, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. He is an artist who has won 5 Grammy Awards, 2 Oscars for film music, 1 Tony Award, and 1 Golden Globe, becoming one of the rare EGOT artists, those who have won all 4 major awards in music and theater. His spectacular tours, especially the Farewell Yellow Brick Road tour that stretched across America and Europe, turned Elton into a global icon, where every show was not just a performance but a festival of music and emotion. He composed famous film scores such as The Lion King, winning an Oscar with the song Can You Feel the Love Tonight, and the 1997 version of Candle in the Wind in memory of Princess Diana became the best-selling single in the world. Elton is also an LGBTQ+ cultural icon, using his voice and image to inspire and fight for equal rights. Every step, from the glittering stages to the legendary recording studios, affirms his position as a genius artist, not only in technique, but also in his ability to touch the hearts of millions of people. The awards, the recordings, the packed house concerts are all proof of the resilience and tireless dedication of a living legend. But behind the brilliant stage lights, Elton John once faced deep pain. A childhood lacking affection, pressure from a strict father, and the feeling of never being good enough formed in him an intense craving for recognition and love. When fame arrived, the psychological pressure from stardom, exhaustion from long tours, addiction to alcohol and cocaine, and prolonged depression once made him feel like he would completely collapse. His first marriage to Renee Blewell failed, losing close friends to AIDS, eating disorders, old age, and declining health, all created a chain of brutal events. But Elton did not give up. He turned pain into music, using the piano, his voice, and lyrics to heal himself and connect with other wounded souls. Every note, every tour became proof of his resilient will, of the ability to rise after every fall, of survival not only thanks to talent, but also thanks to perseverance, determination, and faith in the power of music as salvation. Please hit like and share this video as a small way to honor the extraordinary journey of Elton John, who stood firm through all the pain and challenges. At the same time, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the stories about his life, music, and profound events where every note contains a life or death story. Elton John was born in Pinner, Middlesex, into a middle-class family full of pressure, where expectations always weighed heavily on the shoulders of the boy Reginald Dwight from the very first days. His father, Stanley Dwight, was strict and rarely showed affection, making Elton always feel he had to strive endlessly to be recognized, but rarely received praise or encouragement. His mother, Sheila, was loving but also sparing with words and busy with work, creating an invisible distance that made Elton learn from a young age how to comfort himself and find joy on his own. The feeling of not being good enough appeared every day. The boy compared himself to his friends, to the standards his parents set, and to what society expected. Every mistake, no matter how small, left a deep mark on his soul, like a silent knife carving into his still fragile self-confidence. From the earliest years of his life, Elton realized the difference within himself, discovered that he was gay, and understood that it was something that had to be hidden, a heavy secret that made him both fearful and lonely, forcing him to learn how to endure his emotions alone without anyone to share them with. In that atmosphere of pressure, the piano became his only refuge, the place where the boy could breathe, where loneliness and the craving for love found resonance. Music became the only thing that confirmed his existence, a lifeline, a place where he could express everything that could not be said in words. The first piano keys rubbed against his small hands, each note echoing in the quiet family room like an affirmation that he was not forgotten. that he could still create something beautiful amid the lack of affection. The first performances in the church, where Elton was still a wide-eyed boy looking at his parents and the young worshippers, were the moments when the passion for music began to nurture an intense desire to live in his soul. Every song he sang, even if awkward, even if imperfect, carried all his loneliness, all his fears, and all his craving for acceptance. In the flickering candlelight of the church, music was not just sound but breath, warmth in the cold silence, a thread connecting the boy to the belief that he still had value. Elton learned to listen to himself through the piano keys, learned to talk to his own loneliness, learned to turn silent pain into vibrant melodies, and it was in those moments that the desire to become an artist, to become a voice that could touch others, began to form. From those small performances, the curious eyes of a few listeners, the scattered applause in the church, the boy Reginald Dwight realized that music could replace the words he had not yet dared to speak. He sang to be heard, to exist, to prove that he deserved to be loved and recognized. The tireless hours of practice, the trembling but determined notes, each small piece of music gradually built in him the belief that life, though full of pressure and loneliness, could still bloom through the piano keys and his singing voice. That craving, nurtured from a childhood under pressure and lacking affection, was the very first seed that led Elton John onto the path of becoming a music legend, where every later song contained both pain, a life-or-death craving, and the desire to be loved above all else. Elton John, after those years of lonely and pressured childhood, began to expand his musical world when he met Bernie Taupin, who later became an inseparable partner for more than 50 years of his career. Bernie, with his keen insight into lyrics and emotion, understood Elton's loneliness and craving for recognition from the very first meeting, and from there formed a deep collaborative relationship where music became the connection between two different but harmonious souls. In the dark rooms, where the light was just enough to illuminate the piano keys, Elton practiced relentlessly, his fingers gliding over each key as a way to tell the world that he existed, that he deserved to be heard. Music from these solitary practice sessions was not just technical training. It became a spiritual salvation, the place where the boy Reginald Dwight found breath amid the emptiness of childhood, where every melody sounded like a declaration that loneliness could not erase his value. In the performances at the church, where his piano playing and singing blended with familiar lyrics, Elton began to understand the true power of music. It could not only save himself, but also touch other hearts, people struggling with loneliness, fear, or despair. Every note, every melody he created contained his own tragedy, transformed into emotional ranges that listeners had never known before. In this process, the desire for recognition was not limited to others hearing his voice, but also a way for him to affirm himself, to resist the feeling of not being good enough that had haunted him since childhood. It was Bernie Taupin, with his imagery-rich and emotional lyrics, who helped Elton realize that music could be a refuge, but also a bridge leading him from loneliness to understanding, from personal desire to an early-forming music career. Through the months and years of practice in the dark room, through each note echoing in the church, Elton's personal style gradually took shape, a unique combination of refined piano technique, emotional harmony skills, and a powerful singing voice carrying a distinctive imprint that later became an unmistakable trademark. The tragic inner world, once hidden in his parents' eyes or society's harsh comments, was now fully revealed through every melody, every musical passage, and every small song. The desire for recognition, the craving to leave a mark in this world, turned into motivation for him to practice endlessly, to compose, to experiment, and to perform, not for fame, but for the survival of a soul that had once been isolated. Every day passing in the dark room, the sound of the piano was proof of the effort to overcome loneliness, of the determination to turn pain into art, and of the will to never surrender to the difficulties stemming from childhood and social pressures. Elton John's music was not just technique, but the way he told his own story, transforming tragedy into something that could be felt and shared with the world. And it was precisely in these solitary moments that his personal style and early career were shaped. A music icon not only in talent, but also in the ability to survive, the ability to turn pain into strength, the ability to make the whole world listen to the voice from deep within the heart of a boy who was once lonely and wounded. When the piano sounded, the church lights sparkling on Elton's young but determined face, all fears, all feelings of not being good enough, all pressure from family or society seemed to vanish, giving way to the belief that one voice, one story told through music could save himself and other hearts as well. It was from these moments that Elton John learned that desire, a tragic inner world, and faith in music would be the baggage he carried throughout his life, helping him stand firm through challenges and upheavals, and paving the way for a legendary career that would later move millions of people around the world. After those years of relentless practice in the dark room and performing in the church, Elton John began to step out into the real world of music, where every show was a new challenge and every effort seemed to face constant rejection. His early performances at small bars in London were where he learned how to capture the audience's attention, where the dim lights and quiet crowds created a space that was both intimate and cold. Each time he tried sending demo tapes to record labels, Elton had to face rejection letters, often being criticized as too unusual, too strange, or not fitting the popular taste of that time. Those failures did not make him collapse, but only strengthened his will, pushing him to seek a distinctive style, a path no one had taken before. From these experiences, Elton's glam rock style began to form, combining deeply emotional music with flamboyant stage visuals, from sparkling suits and unique glasses to standout costume details, all aimed at expressing the personality and vitality of a young artist trying to assert himself. Every performance, whether in a bar or a small studio, became an opportunity to experiment, to throw himself into the music without caring about comments or rejection. Elton learned to turn every scrutinizing look into fuel, every criticism into motivation, so that music was not just technique but became a full means of expressing his inner world, his life or death craving, and his desire for recognition. Finally, those tireless efforts were rewarded with his first hits that made his name: Your Song, with its simple yet deeply emotional melody, Rocket Man, that brought his image to the world, and Tiny Dancer, the delicate ballad that both told a story and awakened listeners' emotions. These songs not only opened the door to fame, but also helped Elton John realize the true power of music. It could connect human hearts, save souls, and turn loneliness into something that could be shared with the world. However, along with the spreading sense of success, Elton still felt the deep loneliness left by his childhood and family pressure. Even though the brilliant stage lights shone, even though thousands of people clapped and cheered, he sometimes still felt alone, as if no one truly understood the wounded inner world of a boy who once had to hide himself and face loneliness from a young age. The craving for fame and success, the desire for recognition, became the driving force that kept him moving forward. But it was also the source that made each early success mixed with anxiety and the lack of a feeling of safety and being loved. Every performance, even after having famous hits, Elton still repeated the habit of recording in the dark room and practicing non-stop, as if to remind himself that success could not erase the pain that had formed in his childhood. Music became the place where he both healed himself and sent a message to those who felt lost, that even in the loneliest and most desperate moments, one could still find a voice, hope, and strength to survive. Elton learned to balance between the stage lights and loneliness, between fame and private life, between emotional songs and his tragic inner world, thereby building a unique personal style, a music icon who could both touch the audience's hearts and reflect his own pain and life-or-death cravings. It was precisely from these years that Elton John gradually formed his early career, which was by no means easy. Every step on the music path carried the mark of inner struggle. The tireless hours of practice in the dark room, the disappointments from rejection, and the indescribable joy when he first saw one of his songs loved by people. The feeling of initial success, though brilliant, was still mixed with loneliness, reminding him that fame and applause could not replace the love, understanding, and real connection that a person needs. And it was thanks to music, thanks to his persistence with the piano and his singing voice, that Elton John found the means to survive, to heal himself, and to begin writing the story of a legend, where every note was both a victory over loneliness and a stepping stone for his early career and the unique style that the world would later remember. After the first successes with the hits Your Song, Rocket Man, and Tiny Dancer, Elton John quickly entered a phase of global explosion, where his music no longer just sounded in small studios or churches, but spread across the world through famous albums and massive tours. The album Goodbye Yellow Brick Road marked an important turning point, not only because of the complexity in the music and lyrics, but also because of the way Elton turned personal experiences into stories that easily touched listeners' hearts. Next came Candle in the Wind, an emotional ballad originally remembering Marilyn Monroe and later rewritten to remember Princess Diana, proving his strong ability to connect emotions. Elton John's music also reached the big screen with the soundtrack for The Lion King, where every note and lyric became a thread connecting the imaginary world with real emotions, turning him into a globally influential artist, with a power to inspire that went beyond ordinary music. Alongside his brilliant career, Elton John stepped into endless long tours, especially the shows in Las Vegas, where audiences demanded perfection in every note, every movement, every story told. Each night of performance was a challenge both physically and mentally. A packed schedule, high-intensity rehearsals, constant travel between stages and studios, sometimes lasting for months without enough rest. While fans enjoyed the brilliant stage lights and immortal melodies, Elton John had to silently endure deep loneliness. When the long nights backstage or in the cold hotel room had no sound except his own breathing and heartbeat, the pressure from fame, from the expectations of audiences and the media, turned every show into an inner battle where Elton had to constantly prove himself, while maintaining the image of a legend and hiding the mental wounds from his childhood and the years of addiction. The loneliness and distance from family became clear when Elton John realized that each long performance took away precious time with loved ones. The exhausted nights after tours, when only the silence of the room and hotel walls remained, he often remembered his parents, the people who had taught him resilience but had never truly expressed affection, and the relationships that had been missed because music took up all his time and mind. Those distances were not only physical, but also emotional, where fame and stage lights created an invisible wall between him and those he loved. Each time he stepped onto the stage, he felt the joy of the audience, but he could not deny the emptiness that the lights and applause could not soothe. Professional pressure not only tired the body, but also awakened painful memories. Having gone through a lonely childhood, months under family pressure, and the years struggling with addiction, Elton John learned to turn those pains into performance energy, using his voice and music as a means to release emotions, to heal himself at the same time and convey a message of survival to the audience. The audience only saw a brilliant artist on stage, but few knew that behind it were the tireless hours of practice in the dark room, the sleepless nights due to performance pressure, and the silent moments behind the lights where loneliness waited to overwhelm. In these periods, Elton John constantly experimented and developed his unique personal style, combining refined music with flamboyant stage visuals that both attracted audiences and protected his own identity. Each sparkling suit, each strange pair of glasses, each performance move became part of a life-or-death story of the endless effort to prove his own value. The resounding success came, but with it the inner burden, loneliness, the pressure of fame, and the feeling of disconnection from what was most important in life. Elton John learned to stand firm between those two worlds, where the lights and applause were rewards, but could not compensate for the deep wounds, and where music became the only salvation, both nurturing self-belief and serving as a message to those who had once been lonely, that pain could turn into strength. And resilience was not about never falling, but about continuing to stand up every day to keep singing, to keep living, to become a legend who overcame all tragedy. After the years of shining with legendary albums and world tours, Elton John entered a dark period where the halo on stage could not dispel the ghosts haunting his soul. Cocaine addiction, alcohol, and prolonged mental pressures from childhood caused Elton to fall into depression, sometimes feeling like he could not continue standing firm. The sleepless nights, the long tours, and the constant pressure from fame exhausted his body and spirit, while eating disorders turned maintaining his stage image into a real battle. Each meal became a nightmare, each passing day a struggle between the craving for creativity and the need for survival, between responsibility to music and the gradual self-destruction. His first marriage to Renate Bloal, which took place in the early years of fame, also quickly ended in failure and pain. Elton John, who was then still struggling with himself and his sexuality, could not maintain a normal relationship. The psychological distance and inner secrets caused the love to fall apart. This breakup not only left a wound in his heart, but also deepened the loneliness, making Elton realize that fame and success could not replace closeness and real love. The memories of the failed marriage always lingered in his mind, sometimes rising when he prepared to go on stage, when all the lights and applause could not soothe the secret pain. Meanwhile, the loss of close friends, many of whom died from AIDS, once again plunged Elton into despair. Each death was a heavy blow to his heart, reminding him that fame and survival did not protect anyone from pain and death. The feeling of survivor's guilt surrounded him. He was still standing here, still performing, still loved, while his close friends had gone forever. Those nights, sitting alone in the hotel room, music became his only friend, a bridge to those who had passed, and a place to release pain that no one could see. This period was also when Elton's career was seriously threatened. The addiction, depression, eating disorders, along with the pressure from fame and long tours, caused his creativity and performing ability to decline. Many times he almost missed important performances and even considered giving up music completely. But even in the most desperate moments, music was still the salvation, the reason for him to continue existing. Each time he placed his hands on the piano keys, each time he raised his voice to sing, Elton felt reminded that this was the only thing keeping him alive and meaningful. Inside, Elton struggled non-stop. Loneliness, survivor's guilt, and the pressure from fame created an emotional storm, making him ask himself many times whether he deserved to continue standing on stage, whether music still had the power to save himself. Each song, each note became a confession, a way for him to dialogue with himself and with those who had gone. Music was no longer just performance, but became spiritual medicine, where he could release his pain, turn loneliness into strength, and keep the faith that, despite everything, he could still create something beautiful and meaningful. Those tours, recording sessions, and comeback shows after getting clean were not only proof of talent, but also expressions of Elton's inner strength and endurance. He learned to stand firm amid emotional storms, knowing that to survive and continue creating, he had to accept facing the pain instead of avoiding it. The audience saw a brilliant Elton John on stage, but few knew that behind the sparkling suits and unique glasses was a person once haunted by loneliness, once pushed to the brink of despair by pressure and addiction, and who still rose resiliently, using music to heal and connect. It was thanks to music that Elton John not only survived those tragic years, but also gradually found his own voice. The tragic inner world, Loneliness, survivor's guilt, and the loss of friends were transformed into immortal melodies, from piano to lyrics, making each song not just art, but also proof of the power of human will. In the long nights after tours, when the lights went out and everyone left, he still sat by the piano, repeating the notes, seeking balance, reminding himself that endurance was not about never falling, but about continuing to stand up, continuing to sing, continuing to live, even though the pain was still there. Music remained the bridge between a painful past and hope for the future, between unstable young Elton John and the music legend that the whole world would never forget. After those years immersed in addiction and depression, in 1990, Elton John entered an important phase in his life when he decided to get clean and rebuild his life. Giving up cocaine, alcohol, and those self-destructive habits was by no means easy. Every day was a battle with cravings, with fear, and with the ghosts from the past, the childhood wounds, the pressure of fame, and the successive losses in life. But Elton knew that if he did not change, his career, his health, and even his faith in music would be completely destroyed. He turned to rehab methods, psychological therapy, and support from friends and close ones. And step by step, he learned to take control of himself. Successfully overcoming addiction not only helped his body recover, but also created a new beginning, where he could look at everything with clarity and a deep awareness of the value of life. Right after breaking free from addiction, Elton John returned to music with a focus and discipline he had never had before. The tours, albums, and continuous performances became the means for him to heal himself, with every note and every melody carrying the experience of survival, pain, and the craving to exist. Music now was not just performance or making a living, but became a way for him to confront his inner self, to release loneliness, the obsession from fame, and the painful past. The long practice days, the tense performance nights, the long tours where the stage lights and the audience's applause became the environment for him to affirm himself. All contributed to rebuilding his confidence and will to live. The loneliness from his youth, from the pressure of fame, and from failures in his personal life did not disappear. But Elton learned to face it and turn it into motivation. Each time he stepped onto the stage, each time he touched the piano, he was not only singing for the audience, but also singing to heal himself, to affirm that he was still standing firm, still capable of creating something beautiful from pain. Music became the bridge between his inner world and the outside world, between the dark past and the challenging present, between the lost young Elton John and the legend the whole world recognized. This comeback was not just about fame or success, but also about spiritual recovery, where he learned to set boundaries, protect himself, and learn to balance between his career and personal life. Elton began participating in tours with a new awareness, not letting professional pressure drain his energy, not letting fame overshadow his true emotions, and not letting prolonged pain take away the meaning of music. Every day was a lesson in endurance, the ability to rise resiliently after every fall, the ability to continue creating and living fully even though the past still had unhealed wounds. The albums after the recovery period deeply reflected Elton John's inner experiences and recovery journey, where music was not just a commercial product but a message of survival, a way for him to connect with fans so they could see that even in the darkest moments, light and hope could still be found. The returning tours were no longer just about fame or money. They were proof of spiritual strength, of his choice to live honestly and meaningfully, showing that endurance was not about never falling, but about continuing to stand up, continuing to sing, and continuing to face every challenge life presented. Through the recovery process, Elton John learned that music was the most powerful means of healing, not only saving himself, but also saving kindred hearts, the audience who had once been lonely or disappointed. Every note, every song carried a story of survival, resilience, and the message that no matter how much tragedy, loneliness, and loss one went through, a person could still stand firm, could still love, and could still find hope. The years after Getting Clean affirmed a truth that Elton John believed in throughout his life. Endurance was not physical strength or fame, but the ability to face oneself, face the pain, and still continue to live, continue to sing, and continue to inspire the world. The performance nights after recovery, although his body was still tired and his spirit sometimes still weak, Elton John stood on stage with calm and determination, knowing that every time he raised his voice was a victory. Every note was proof that pain could not destroy faith and the craving for creation. Music now was both his profession, a place for him to heal, and a message sent to all those struggling with themselves that endurance, resilience, and faith in music could help overcome every challenge, every loss, and every loneliness that life brought. Through each tour, each wording, each note played, Elton John proved that a person could recover, stand firm, and continue to shine, even though the pain, tragedies, and challenges that had once covered his life were still there, silently, but never erasing the will to live and the craving to be loved and recognized. After many years struggling with the ghosts of the past, addiction, depression, and loneliness, Elton John's life began to show light when David Furnish entered his world. The meeting with David was not just a coincidence of two emotionally and passionately compatible people, but also opened a new chapter in Elton's spiritual life, where love, companionship, and trust became the foundation to heal long-standing wounds. In 2014, they officially got married, turning this relationship into a symbol of love and stability, a safe refuge amid the storm of fame and the non-stop pressures of music. Not long after, their two sons were born through surrogacy, a real miracle for Elton, who had once gone through deep loneliness and been haunted by the inability to build a normal family before. The arrival of the children became spiritual salvation, a powerful source of motivation for him not only to maintain his career, but also to learn to slow down and cherish every moment with family. Every morning when he woke up and saw the innocent eyes and pure smiles of his sons, Elton felt compensation for the losses of his youth, the days when he had to struggle alone with loneliness and the pressure from fame. Elton John's lifestyle began to be adjusted to prioritize family, balancing between tours, the studio, and the simple but precious moments with loved ones. He learned to cook breakfast for the children, read books, play with them, and take care of every small detail in daily life that might have been overlooked before. In conversations with David, he realized that love was not just a feeling or being together, but also the ability to be patient, to accompany and support each other through difficulties, pain, and obsessions from the past. Music continued to be the focus of his life. But now family became the main axis, the place where Elton found real peace, the source of energy nurturing his will and creative inspiration. Elton John's later performances and recordings still retained their passion, but no longer served only fame or success. They became a way for him to express deep emotions, stories about joy, pain, and love. Music became a bridge between him and his family, between the past and the present, where every melody carried a story of survival, proof of the power of recovery and resilience. Elton John learned to share himself through music without hiding his fears or pain, and at the same time learned to accept support and love from David and the children, something his youth had once lacked. In the years with his family, Elton began to realize that endurance, the ability to stand firm through upheavals, was not only personal strength, but also the ability to open his heart, to welcome and give love. Every evening when the stage lights went out, he returned to the peaceful home, where the children's laughter rang out and David waited with a gentle smile. That was when Elton truly felt the peace and completeness he had craved for decades. These moments became inspiration for new compositions, Later albums were not only about fame or success, but also music reflecting the healing process, love, and inner resilience. Family also taught Elton John how to forgive himself, how to accept past mistakes, the failed marriages, the friends who had been lost, and the years of addiction and self-destruction. David Furnish and the children became the anchor keeping him grounded, helping Elton understand that music was strength, but family was the place that nourished the soul, where every note and every lyric became vivid, meaningful, and filled with real love. While tours still took place, Elton John could now balance career and family, no longer getting caught in the whirlwind of fame to the point of forgetting the most important things. His sons were a source of energy and motivation for him to maintain his stage performance, but at the same time, they were the reason for him to learn to slow down, to listen, to share, and to cherish the small but valuable moments. Elton's life became more harmonious, where music and family coexisted, where fame was no longer pressure but a means to convey messages of love and the power to overcome tragedy. The years with David and the children transformed Elton John from a lonely and mentally exhausted legend into a person who knew how to love, how to heal, and how to create meaning from pain, where every note was not just performance but a story of existence, of endurance, and of endless hope. Music still flowed through him, but now family became the focus, the spiritual home he could rely on, the source of inspiration for every day of living and for each immortal melody that the whole world would remember forever. When stepping into old age, Elton John's body began to reflect the years of non-stop dedication to music and the stage, where the pressure of long tours, consecutive performance nights, and constant travels had accumulated into clear signs of fatigue. He underwent hip surgery, a necessary procedure to maintain his ability to move and perform, but it was also a reminder of the limits of age and the body. Infections, days of recovery from prolonged exhaustion, and age-related health issues forced Elton to face the reality that time and energy were no longer unlimited, and the fear of losing the ability to perform, something that had become the most important part of his life, began to creep into his thoughts. To maintain his career and continue performing at a high level, Elton John had to learn to apply strict discipline to his daily habits. Every day had a clear schedule, balancing piano practice, singing, reasonable rest, and maintaining physical fitness. He had to adjust tours to suit his health, avoid overload, and create time for mental recovery. This was not only a physical issue, but also the way he kept his mind sharp, maintained focus, and preserved creativity in every performance. Elton learned to cherish every moment on stage, from listening to the audience's applause to feeling the connection with every note and every melody he had dedicated his life to. The rare days off became precious time for him to take care of himself, relax, and recharge energy. Maintaining sustainable living habits, from light exercise to stretching and meditation, helped Elton not only preserve physical health, but also keep mental clarity and a refreshed spirit. He knew that every performance, whether short or long, was a precious opportunity to convey music and emotion to the audience, and thorough preparation was the way to ensure he could still give his all. In recent tours, Elton John no longer chased a packed schedule like in his peak years. Instead, he selected important shows, places where he could create deep connections with the audience, where music could be felt fully, without being overshadowed by physical or mental pressure. Every performance became a ritual, where he not only sang but also reminded himself of the value of existence, of endurance, and of inner strength. Cherishing every performance moment was not only about art, but also about spiritual survival, where he proved that although age and illness might limit the body, will and desire could still keep him standing firm on stage. Elton John also focused on creating long-term habits to protect his health and spirit. Mornings began with gentle exercises, balanced eating habits, rest time, and meditation had become indispensable parts of daily life, helping him maintain energy for performances and prevent potential health issues. Maintaining this discipline also helped him feel in control of his life, reduce stress and anxiety, and at the same time provide a solid foundation to face challenges in old age. Every step, every piano key, every song Elton sang now carried a deeper meaning. Music was not just work, but a way for him to connect with himself, with the audience, and with those who had accompanied him throughout life. The diligence, discipline, and awareness of protecting his health helped him maintain his form without having to trade off health or family happiness. Time and age had taught him that endurance was not only the strength to perform, but also the ability to live responsibly with his own body, with his spirit, and with loved ones. In the light of age 79, Elton John stands on stage with calm and appreciation, knowing that every effort to maintain health, every hour of practice, and each persistent habit brings the ability to continue singing, to continue creating, and to continue inspiring. The fear of losing the ability to perform still exists, but in its place is the understanding that every performance moment is a precious gift, that every note and every melody is proof of resilient will, the ability to recover, and the spirit that never stops moving forward. Elton John learned to live in harmony with his body, to respect limits, and to use every day fully, where music and mental health go hand in hand to sustain life, keep the mind sharp, and continue writing the story of a living legend, not only with talent but also with endurance and inner strength. After those years of old age, not only bringing physical limitations, but also forcing Elton John to face even deeper losses when many close friends, colleagues, and those who had accompanied him in both life and music passed away one by one due to AIDS and other serious illnesses. Each death was a mental shock and immeasurable pain, making Elton feel powerless before the finiteness of life and the cruelty of fate. He had witnessed friends who were still young and full of life leaving this world before they could fulfill their dreams, and the feeling of survivor's guilt grew stronger as Elton realized that he was still standing firm on stage while the closest hearts had fallen silent forever. That powerlessness was not just a simple feeling of loss, but also an enormous inner burden, where each night returning to the hotel room, Elton had to sit alone in silence, listening to old songs, remembering each smile, each laugh, and the happy memories with his departed friends. In every later performance, he carried that longing, turning music into a bridge to commemorate them. When he raised his voice to sing familiar ballads or energetic songs on stage, Elton seemed to send the message that those who had gone were still present through music, through the melodies they had once loved and shared with him. Music became the means for him to maintain the connection with the past, while also helping the audience feel the loss, empathize with the pain, and together remember those who had passed. Not stopping at commemoration through music, Elton John also actively participated in charitable activities, especially programs supporting HIV/AIDS patients and music education for the younger generation. Those efforts not only helped him somewhat soothe his own pain, but also conveyed messages of hope, survival, and boundless love. He learned to turn loss into meaningful action, helping those still struggling with illness, adversity, and loneliness. Each charity fund, each support program was proof of the ability to overcome tragedy and use personal experience to empower others, turning pain into strength for the community. In this process, Elton realized that continuing to perform was not only a professional responsibility but also a way to keep living, to prevent himself from being swallowed by loneliness and despair. Each show, each later recording contained both pride and pain, directly reflecting his personal experiences and losses. The audience saw a brilliant artist on stage, but few knew that behind it was the continuous struggle with memories of departed friends, with the mental losses that fame or success could not compensate for. That tragedy became a source of energy for Elton. In the many years that followed, he learned to harmonize with his own emotions, knowing that pain could not be avoided, but only faced and turned into strength. Each time he held the microphone and stepped onto the stage, He was not only singing for the audience, but also singing for himself, for the friends who had passed, for the hearts that had endured similar pain. Music became the place where he released emotions, where he expressed the resilience and endurance that his entire life had forged. These years also helped Elton John develop a deeper ability for empathy and understanding. He was no longer just a performing artist. He became a guide, an inspiration, and a role model for overcoming tragedy. Tragedy still existed in every note, but it did not suffocate hope. Instead, it became proof that people could be resilient, could rise after loss, and could continue to live fully. Elton John taught that endurance was not only the ability to survive challenges, but also the ability to turn pain into life value, to turn music into a bridge connecting the past and the present, between oneself and others. With each later show, Elton John carried memories of lost friends and departed colleagues, to turn the stage into a place of remembrance and healing. The notes he raised were not just sounds, but prayers, reminders of the power of music, resilience, and love. He realized that, although fame brought light and applause, it was the losses and tragedies that shaped the depth of a person, helping him live honestly, perform sincerely, and convey true emotions to the audience. In each of those moments, Elton John was both sorrowful and resilient, both mourning and grateful, both remembering the past and living fully in the present. He learned to accept loss as an inevitable part of life, knowing that tragedy and loneliness could accompany endurance, and that music was not just a profession, but a means to live, to feel, and to connect people. Every note, every melody, every song became proof of a life that had both gone through pain and shone, where emotions were portrayed truthfully, where tragedy did not erase hope, where Elton John, despite countless losses, still stood firm and continued to inspire the whole world. After the years witnessing the loss of friends and struggling with personal pain, Elton John entered a career phase full of pressure from fame, where fame and success were no longer just pride, but became a heavy burden on his shoulders. The huge contracts, endless world tours, and outstanding income brought financial stability, but at the same time, they brought immense mental pressure. Every day, he had to face difficult choices between maintaining a perfect image on stage and taking care of himself and his loved ones. The packed schedule with constant flights, recording sessions, rehearsals, press conferences, and performances left Elton with almost no time to rest, and both his body and mind were under continuous strain. The imbalance between the stage and private life became clearer than ever. On performance nights, when the bright lights shone on the stage and thousands of audience members clapped, Elton John still clearly felt the emptiness inside, where the laughter and eyes of family that he had once craved could not be present. Many nights he returned to the hotel with a feeling of absolute loneliness, the empty room leaving only music and memories of peaceful moments that were now hard to find again. Fame and public expectations became an invisible pressure, where every lyric, every song, every note had to be perfect, had to convey emotion, and still maintain the image of a legend. Despite a tired body and a stressed mind, each show was not just a performance but also proof of endurance, the ability to keep singing and keep contributing, even when the body was tired and the spirit was exhausted. Elton learned to use his inner strength to get through the long nights, the times when pronunciation was not perfect, the moments of breathlessness on stage, turning every pressure into energy, turning fatigue into vitality, and turning every note into proof that no matter how many difficulties he went through, he still stood firm. The cost of fame in music was not measured only in money or contracts. It was also the hours lost with family, the vacations that could not be enjoyed, the birthdays of his sons or important ceremonies where he could only be absent. Each new album, each tour, even though it brought success and awards, came with longing, a feeling of guilt for not being present, and the pressure to maintain a perfect image in front of millions of audience members. Elton John once confided that sometimes he felt like he was living two lives, one as the artist with lights and applause, and one as a human with emotional needs, care, and connection that fame could not fulfill. However, these very experiences also trained him in resilient and persistent endurance. He learned to accept that he could not balance everything perfectly, but he could still live fully and contribute. Each night on stage, each note raised was an affirmation that he did not give up, that music and passion rose above pain and loneliness. Fame and success were rewards, but they were also challenges he had to face every day, where every moment of performance demanded spirit, body, and heart. These years reminded Elton John that endurance was not about never falling, but about the ability to stand up after every exhaustion, to continue singing, to continue creating music, to continue living and inspiring. That dedication, even though accompanied by mental costs and personal losses, was also proof of the inner strength of a legend, where fame and stage lights could not cover the depth of emotion, but only highlighted the ability to be resilient and to struggle to preserve his career, to preserve music, and to live fully with every moment of life. Each show, each note, and each step on stage recorded persistence and the spirit of constantly moving forward, where Elton John continued to sing, continued to live, and continued to inspire despite the non-stop pressures from fame, from the schedule, and from himself. After the years of tension from fame, long tours, and mental pressure, Elton John often returned to memories, where each song and each melody was tied to the deepest experiences of his life. Every song was a vivid story, containing pain, loneliness, the craving for love, and the brief happiness he had once experienced. From Your Song reflecting the innocence and craving for recognition of youth, to Candle in the Wind conveying regret and appreciation for those who had gone, Elton's music became the bridge between the past and the present, between personal emotions and the audience listening. In every note, there were silent wounds, moments of inner struggle, but also pride because he had stood firm, continued to create, and lived fully with music. Bernie Taupin, Elton's inseparable partner, always accompanied and supported him through every difficult phase. Bernie was not only the lyricist, but also a spiritual support, helping Elton maintain his career and faith in himself. This collaborative relationship, lasting more than 50 years, was the foundation for every composition, every album, every tour of Elton to be carried out fully, despite facing the pressure of fame, long tours, and personal upheavals. The cooperation between the two not only helped Elton to perfect immortal hits, but also helped him maintain mental stability in the tiring and lonely years. Reflecting on life through music, Elton John learned to turn pain into art. Each song became a place for him to release emotions, to dialogue with himself, to remember losses, and to cherish precious moments of life. The tours, the studio recording sessions, every detail in the composition and performance process were proof of endurance, the resilient and persistent ability of an artist who had gone through many tragedies but still did not give up music, and the desire to live. The long practice hours, the tiring performance nights, the continuous travels from one city to another, all were turned by Elton into opportunities to express his inner strength and love for music. Despite facing tragedy and loss, Elton John still knew how to cherish the past. He realized that it was precisely the difficulties and pain that had helped him grow, to learn empathy, to learn to love, and to learn to live honestly with himself. Looking back, every failure in life, every personal loss, every period of addiction and depression became valuable lessons, the material that made his music deeper and more emotional. Elton learned to turn pain into art, to use his voice and melodies to tell his own survival story, and through that to convey a message to millions of people that pain could become strength and music could save wounded souls. In those moments of reflection, Elton often remembered the high-intensity tours, the all-night recording sessions, and the shows where the pressure from fame seemed to want to pull him down. But he still stood firm, still gave his all to music, knowing that endurance was not about never getting tired, but about the ability to keep going, to keep singing, and to keep creating art despite all difficulties. Each note, each song, each album was proof of persistence, of the ability to rise after falls, and of the belief that through music, every loss and every tragedy could be turned into something meaningful. Those memories were not just private stories, but also a journey shared with the audience. When he raised his voice on stage, Elton John carried his entire life experience, from the loneliness in childhood, the pressure of fame, the loss of friends, to the happy moments with family and loved ones. His music became a bridge for everyone to empathize and relive the emotions that Elton himself had experienced. The performance moments, whether simple or spectacular, all reflected the inner depth and mental strength of an artist who lived fully with passion and resilience in the face of challenges. Elton John's life, through music and memories, became living proof of endurance, the ability to endure pain, to turn loneliness and loss into sources of inspiration and strength, and to use music to heal not only himself, but also millions of other hearts. Each note that sounded, each lyric raised, contained tragedy, but also carried the message of hope, love, and the power of survival, where the tragic past could not erase the value and meaning of a music legend. After those years of reminiscing about memories and turning pain into art, Elton John began to see his new role in the music world, not only as a legendary artist, but also as a teacher, a mentor for young artists who were just beginning their journeys and facing similar pressures and challenges. He dedicated time to sharing experiences, guiding piano techniques, performance methods, ways to maintain mental health, and how to use music as a means to heal oneself. Those meetings, workshops, and counseling sessions were not only opportunities for Elton to pass on knowledge, but also occasions when he realized the value of perseverance, endurance, and the ability to connect with passionate young people, helping them avoid the mistakes he himself had once experienced. Alongside inspiring young artists, Elton John also focused strongly on charitable activities, especially in the field of HIV/AIDS and music education. The Elton John AIDS Foundation became a symbol of long-term commitment to the community, supporting those affected by the epidemic, funding education programs and healthcare. His music, from charity performances to social projects, became a tool to spread messages of hope and survival, turning his own painful experiences into strength to help others. The music education programs he initiated not only brought learning opportunities to children, but also inspired them to find their voice and the ability to express themselves through music, just as Elton had once found salvation in his own piano keys. The combination of mentoring and charity also helped Elton John heal his inner self. Each time he saw a young artist find joy and confidence in music, or a person struggling with HIV/AIDS receive support, he felt that some of the past pain was soothed. Music became the bridge between pain and hope, between the past and the present, and each contribution, each moment of sharing helped him find the inner peace that had once seemed difficult to achieve. This was also the way Elton John truly appreciated the value of music, not just as a performance tool but as a means to inspire, to save himself, and to save others. Family has always been the main axis in Elton John's life. After many losses, the years with David Furnish and their two sons became a solid spiritual anchor. Every tour, every show, even though long and pressured, he still maintained connection with his family, knowing that it was their love and support that helped him overcome every challenge. Music, whether passion or profession, now blended with family values and social responsibility, creating a balance that Elton John had taken many years to learn. These years also helped him realize that endurance, the ability to be resilient, was not only the strength to continue standing on stage, but also the ability to live honestly, to help others, and to cherish every moment with family. Every note he raised, every lyric he wrote or performed contained love, empathy, and hope. fans not only heard the voice of a legend, but also felt the survival story, the healing ability, and his unyielding persistence. The feeling of salvation and peace became clearer in these years. Elton John knew that the previous losses, tragedies, and pressures had shaped a person who knew empathy, who knew how to share, and who knew how to cherish what remained. Music now was not only the echo of fame, but also a message about the value of endurance, about the power of love and resilience. He found balance between performing, mentoring, charity, and family, where every moment carried meaning, where music, love, and sharing created a circle of salvation, saving himself, saving others, and leaving a lasting legacy for the next generation. In later performances, Elton John's eyes often lingered on the audience, on the young artists he had once guided, on the people who had received help from the Charity Foundation, and on his family watching from backstage. Each note that sounded was like a message that, despite going through so much pain and loss, one could still find peace, could still heal, and could still inspire those around them. Music became the means of connection, the place where the tragic past, the peaceful present, and the hopeful future blended together, where Elton John, a living legend, continued to stand firm and shine, not only with his voice but also with his heart, with love, and with the ability to turn pain into life value. After stepping into age 79, Elton John has chosen Las Vegas as his refuge and built a peaceful life, separated from the hectic rhythm and glaring stage lights he had lived in for many decades. His private home is discreet, where quietness and privacy have become an important part of preserving his physical and mental health. The walls full of images preserving memories, old albums, musical instruments, and souvenirs from tours around the world remind him of the long journey full of challenges he has gone through. From the first notes in the church to the big stages, from the periods of addiction, depression, to the moments of spiritual salvation thanks to music and family. Music for Elton John is now not just performance or a tool to make a living, but discipline and legacy. Every day, he begins with hours of piano and vocal practice, maintaining careful habits to keep his form and health. In the quiet mornings, he focuses on rhythm, melody, and the way to convey emotion as a way to remind himself that music is the core to connect with himself and with others. Along with practice, Elton spends time resting, meditating, reading books, and taking care of his family, David Furnish and their two sons. Those connections that have become a source of energy, a spiritual anchor for him to maintain balance between private life and art. When preparing for performances, Elton John no longer chases long tours and pressure from fame like before. He chooses smaller stages and venues suitable for his current physical ability, where the audience can feel the music and connection with the artist directly. These performances are not just shows, but also personal rituals, where he checks the rhythm, each note, each lyric, ensuring that every performance brings true emotion, space for the audience and himself to merge with the music. This is also how Elton continues to maintain discipline and his musical legacy, not only through the hits that made his name, but also through the subtlety in every melody, every song carefully prepared, conveying messages of survival, endurance, and mental strength. While music still holds the central role, Elton John is not forgotten his responsibility to the younger generation. He continues to inspire new artists, sharing experiences, performance techniques, ways to maintain health, ways to manage the pressure of fame, and ways to turn music into a means to heal the inner self. Those conversations, workshops, or simply exchanges backstage are opportunities for him to pass on lessons about resilience, endurance, and the true value of art. Elton does not teach how to become famous, but teaches how to live persistently, honestly, and meaningfully with music, so that young artists understand that fame is the result, but inner strength determines long-term life and career. Even though he has found peace in family and an orderly life rhythm, memories of the years of addiction, loneliness, and loss still exist in Elton John. Each time he looks back at old photos, the harsh tours, or listens to old recordings, he remembers the days of struggling with himself, with the pressure of fame, with deep loneliness. Those memories do not make him collapse, but become motivation to cherish every present moment, every smile of his sons, every minute with David, and every second standing on stage, where music continues to heal him and the audience. The combination of music, family, and mentoring has helped Elton John achieve mental balance. Music continues to be the place where he expresses himself, releases emotions, and inspires. Family is where he finds love, stability, and a sense of belonging. Mentoring and charity are where he gives back to the world the values that music has brought him. Through each day of living, he learns to harmonize between career and private life, between painful memories and the peaceful present, between stage lights and the quiet music in the house, to create a full, meaningful, and emotional life. The current years in Las Vegas are also the time when Elton John truly appreciates inner strength, learns to rest properly, takes care of his health, and maintains his form for music. Every morning when he wakes up, he spends time practicing. Each piano key, each sung line carefully tended, as the way he maintains discipline and cherishes his legacy. Every afternoon, when the family gathers, the simple moments become profound joy, soothing the remaining painful memories. These moments remind him that endurance is not only standing firm on stage, but also the ability to maintain inner life, to cherish music, to cherish love, and to cherish himself. At age 79, Elton John still stands firm in the music world, not only as a legend with immortal hits, but also as a person who has learned to slow down, to love, to heal, and to inspire. The combination of music, family, mentoring, and charity creates a circle of salvation. Music heals his soul, family brings peace, mentoring and charity inspire the new generation. His emotions in this period are both peaceful, profound, and meaningful. A rare state of balance, where painful memories still exist but no longer overshadow the light of life, where music, love, and resilience create a full life, inspire, and continue to shine for the whole world. Looking back at the entire life of Elton John, from the lonely and pressured childhood days in Pinner, Middlesex, to the brilliant career and unforgettable events, the picture of his life emerges with all the colors of success, loss, pain, and resilience. That childhood, where the boy Reginald White had to learn to survive in a strict family, where love was rarely expressed clearly, planted deep marks in him, the feelings of not being good enough, and the lingering loneliness that lasted for many years. Those experiences formed in Elton an intense craving for recognition and love, and from there, music became the bridge, the place of spiritual salvation, helping him overcome the wounds and build the voice, style, and personality that the world later knew. Elton John's career is vivid proof of endurance and tireless dedication, from the performances in the church, the nights in small bars, to the legendary albums like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Candle in the Wind, and the soundtrack for The Lion King. He has continuously created, learned, and challenged himself. Every note, every tour, every recording session was the result of persistent effort, of the ability to rise after failures, rejections, mental shocks, and the years struggling with addiction, depression, and eating disorders. The songs and hits not only brought fame and money, but were also the way Elton John told his own story. The story of pain, desire, loneliness, love, and never-ending hope. In his personal life, Elton went through profound tragedies. His first marriage to Renate Bloel fell apart. The loneliness and survivor's guilt still haunted him for many years. Close friends died from AIDS, and many other losses forced him to learn to live with pain. But it was precisely thanks to those challenges that Elton John found the strength to recover, to get clean, to love, and to create a new family with David Furnish and their two sons born through surrogacy. Family became spiritual salvation, where he learned to cherish every moment every smile, every peaceful minute, and at the same time still kept his passion for music, inspiring the younger generation and dedicating himself to charitable activities, especially HIV/AIDS and music education. Looking back, endurance, the ability to be resilient, is the thread running through his life. It is not invincibility or never falling before difficulties, but the ability to rise after every fall, to continue performing, to continue creating music, to continue living, and to continue inspiring. Elton John has learned to turn pain into art, to turn loneliness into a source of creation, to turn failure and loss into mental strength. The harsh years, personal upheavals, pressure of fame, all became material that made the depth of his music and character, making every note and every lyric capable of touching listeners' hearts, healing himself while saving others. The lesson from Elton John's life for the audience is clear but profound. Fame, money, or popularity cannot heal all wounds in life. Only love, music, and the ability to be resilient can help a person stand firm, find meaning, and continue living. Elton has gone through all those challenges and still stands firm, and that very experience has made him a vivid role model for endurance, perseverance, and the value of living honestly with himself. When standing on stage at age 79, closing his eyes and smiling, Elton John is both the artist, the human, and the icon. In that moment, the three vital values of his life, music, family, and dedication to the community, are all honored. Every note that sounds is proof of the tragic past, of the losses and challenges he has overcome, but also a message about hope, about the healing power of music and love. The audience not only sees a legend performing, but also feels the story of endurance, resilience, and the ability to turn pain into the power of survival. The legacy that Elton John leaves is not only contained in the albums and tours, but also in the family he built, in the meaningful charitable activities, in the way he inspires young artists, and in every heart that his music has touched. The losses, tragedies, and pain, instead of destroying him, have been turned into life values, turned into lessons about endurance and the ability to overcome adversity. The emotions in Elton's current years are a blend of tragedy and honor, between painful memories and peace, between cherishing the past and hope for the future. In the stage light, when Elton raises his voice, closes his eyes and smiles, people see not only the legend of music, but also the person who has lived fully, who has learned to heal, who has known how to cherish love, family, and music, and who has passed on to the world the message that endurance, love, and music are the ways to live, to overcome pain, and to create an indelible legacy. Each final note that sounds is vivid proof of resilience, of the values that a life full of upheavals, success, loss, and salvation has forged, and shows that even the deepest tragedies can be turned into light, into hope and inspiration for all who listen. The life of Elton John is an epic both brilliant and tragic, where every note carries loneliness, loss, and the craving for survival. When looking back at the journey, from the pressured and affection-lacking childhood in Pinner, Middlesex, to the first performances in the church, then the nights in small bars, the legendary albums like Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Candle in the Wind, and the soundtrack for The Lion King, one realizes that Elton's success is not only measured by fame, awards, or spectacular tours, but also by the ability to rise after every failure, every inner shock, every profound loss. The pain of losing friends to AIDS, the failed first marriage to Renate Blowell, the years of addiction and depression that seemed to destroy his career, all exist in every note, every song, and every tour he performs. What makes Elton John's story touching is the way he turns pain into the power of survival, and music becomes the means of healing for himself and for the audience. American audiences, especially those struggling with loneliness, social pressure, or personal loss in life can find empathy and valuable lessons that fame or success cannot replace: love, care, and the ability to connect people with each other. Elton teaches us that endurance, resilience in life is not about never falling, but about knowing how to rise after shocks, knowing how to cherish family, love, and simple moments, and knowing how to use one's own painful experiences to spread positive values to others. His story also reminds us that music, art, or passion in any field can become salvation, a place to heal the soul and connect people. Through every detail in Elton's life, from practicing piano in the dark room, long tours, to taking care of family and participating in charitable activities, Americans can draw the lesson: life, though full of upheavals and pain, can still find light, salvation, and hope if one knows how to be resilient, knows how to love, and knows how to cherish the most important things. Elton John's story is vivid proof of inner strength and the ability to overcome all tragedy, a mirror for each person to learn how to live fully, meaningfully, and full of hope. If you feel the strength and the survival story of Elton John, please hit the subscribe button and follow the channel so you do not miss the next inspiring stories. Thank you for accompanying us today. See you again in the next video to explore other extraordinary journeys in the world of music and life.